reassuring that at least Cinnamon gets to be part of this ceremony. Oh, at least it wasn't much of a disaster. Loki Pan, where have you been? Wait, was that blood? You better hope Dragon doesn't kill you.
Hello again, everyone! Welcome back to another Best Character Awards. This is Dragon Videos, your host for this lovely time. So, many of you had gone over the female characters which are best of the best in the Character Awards. But now, for this segment of Fruits Basket's Best Character Awards, we are now going to focus on the male characters. That's right. We're going to go over all the boys that just make us want to smile and be happy with them. To many of you, he's cool, he's hot, and he's filled with attitude, but he comes across as a bit of an eccentric. Hatsuharu Soma, or Haru for short, is born under the Urbiaks, or Cow if you want to do that. He is very cool, calm, and definitely comes off very chill. And the reason why I say eccentric is because if you were to ask him a question, he'll be brutally honest about it, but sometimes would just say, it's a mystery on certain accounts, even though the answer of what's going on is pretty obvious. But make no mistake, he also has a dark side. Black Haru, as that persona is called, can definitely take on a huge problem when it exists. But one of the things he has in terms of earning this spot is mostly because of his relationships. Most memorable is the one with Rin. He was the only one, aside from Kyo's master, who spoke up against Rin's parents as well as took some value in her and also managed to help her through her hard times and help her with her trauma. As for Yuki, these two have an interesting history together. You see, since he was born under the Urbiaks, people had kind of been making fun about those that were born under the Urbiaks, and because of a zodiac tale of how Theok supposedly and foolishly was tricked by the rat to practically go to the festival, and thus, but aside from that, he learned that Yuki was a good person. So I feel like with this character, he deserves a spot because he sort of acts like the Rock towards everyone he's around. Despite his own temperaments and his dark side, he definitely really has a good heart and just means well. He also tries to look out for others any way possible and pays attention to the problem. Not completely, but he does get the general idea of what's going on. And sometimes he will be chill about it and doesn't get firm unless he needs to. But I feel like there are other candidates who can fit that much better. Shigure is a piece of work, not gonna lie. He comes off as very charismatic and aloof, always seeming to rub the wrong way with everyone he seems to come across. Well, with the exception of Toru, of course, who has the patience of a saint. Anyway, he also had a relationship with Mayu which didn't land well, and they kind of have a cold sense of air when they enter the room. Even the Tori doesn't like his mischievous antics. That's right, he definitely has a bit of a dark side with him. You never know what he's thinking or planning. He has a certain way of being manipulative, but oddly enough, his manipulation is used for the powers of good compared to that of Akito's manipulation. He seems to try to push people in the right direction. whether it's just by being funny or if it's just he means well. Plus, he doesn't show much malice towards Toru. He definitely comes across as being manipulative toward her, but not to the point where it comes off as being extremely cruel. And of course, he seems to be the only one who kind of levels with Akito, which is why I put him further down on this list. He seems to somehow get into Akito's head and tries to set up in a way where he's real with her, or have her try to become more confident in her abilities, as well as seems to be the only one who helps Akito go with her identity as being female. Overall, Shigure is a very complicated character. You kind of have a love-hate relationship with him, which is why he's probably one of the best characters in the show. You don't know what he's thinking or what he's going to do next or what he's planning to do with the rest of the characters. But it does seem like he has good intentions at heart and tries to put his plans set up in a way where it is respectful of individuals and not overall cruel. But I feel like I put him this up on the list because there's still other characters that seem to shine brighter than he does. Momiji is practically the cinnamon roll of the boys in this group. He's practically very kind-hearted. He's half German and half Japanese, a very interesting mix. The best part about the 2019 version, though, is the fact that Momiji sounds a little bit more German, which shows more of his heritage. But make no mistake, despite his peppy smiles and happy-go-lucky nature, he still has one chip on his shoulder, and plus he's born under the rabbit zodiac. And that chip is practically his mother. His mother practically rejected him in the worst way possible and was forced to forget about him through the help of Hattori Soma, who does hypnosis. Momiji tries to move on with his life despite the fact that he has to deal with never really celebrating his mom. However, he also that never stops him from wanting to have a relationship with Momo. And he still tries to hold on to the hope, as well as a kind-hearted soul for Toru, and being one of the only few boys who tries to stand up against Akito whenever possible. As he grows older though, and when his curse finally breaks, Momiji becomes a little bit more grounded. He still has his bubbly, kind-hearted nature, but he also does it in a way where it shows some sense of maturity. He also sees Akito now less as a god, but also just someone who's struggling with pain of her past, as well as just someone to pity more than just fear. As well as he recognizes Toru's kindness as something special, and he sees kindness as something of value. I mean, this is one of the reasons why Momiji is practically an ideal boyfriend for a lot of girls. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I know you are eager to have Yuki on this list, and I would understand why. He's one of the two main boys in the Soma trio that first encounters Toru, as well as see her as a special individual. He goes by the name Prince Yuki, mostly because he's very charming, he's smart, and of course he's the leader of class president. And of course, being born under the year of rat, you practically have a lot of opportunities best before you. But of course, being born under the year of a rat has its problems. But he definitely has a very straight face when he plays it along, especially when it comes to his fans, unfortunately. And due to some of his closing his own personal feelings off from others and being very aloof, it's probably one of the reasons why some people, like these girls, are so obsessed with him. And that can make it a little bit frustrating on Yuki's part. And it doesn't really help when he's through a lot of trauma, most of it being caused by Akito, and of course, suffering from asthma as being one of them. When they were kids, Akito was suddenly snapped and would force him into a room and put black paint everywhere, scrawling it along the walls, telling him that he's nothing without her. And has been also constantly whipping him and saying horrible things to his face, which didn't exactly help when Yuki's very arrogant and demanding mother, as I'd like to put quotes, it definitely wasn't the best of examples of being a parent. She seems to see him as a stepping stone in terms of getting of where she needs to be in the Soma family, more than seeing him as an actual son that needs help. However, one of the things that probably happens as Yuki becomes more attached to Toru, he soon develops his own character. He becomes a little bit less aloof and still has some of his smart and charisma, but it's up to the point where he's a little bit more sincere about it, as well as he begins to notice Machi's own problems as well, which is why he's probably one of the best characters. Yuki is practically one of those boys, as well as people in general, that despite of having a sense of perfection that people would admire or strive for, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's all that great. As the expression says, all that's glitter does not mean it's gold. In this case with Yuki, he still suffered from his own personal issues and tried to learn how to do sincere kindness and love, and in a lot of ways he recognizes his own faults more than anyone would describe. And this is why I put him number 2, because over time he becomes more human and recognizes his own faults. Oh yes, ladies and gentlemen, I put him in number 1 for very good reasons, and face it, we all love Kyo. Despite of how he was at the beginning, he comes off as very harsh and aloof, wanting nothing more than to pick a fight with Yuki, or in some cases Arisa, when the situation calls for it. And he also has a good sense of karate, but he was practically obsessed with taking down Yuki. But mostly because he is born under the Cat Zodiac, one of the most cursed and abandoned members of the Zodiac if ever known. He tries his best to fit in, but unfortunately, with the cat there's always a huge price. The biggest is that if he doesn't wear that red and white bracelet he wears all the time, it begins to give off his final true form, the cat's true and morbid form, which makes him feel like some of his ugliness being put into play. But despite all of that, one of the things we do notice along with Toru is that Kyo really is a kind-hearted person who actually notices Toru's problems, as well as the fact that he really is a very loving boy who just wants to look out for others. But the problem is he's been so denied and rejected so much that he doesn't know how to express it in a way where he can actually lay his guard down without feeling like he has to put arms up with any other person that comes into the room. Thankfully though, he has been encountering a lot of other people in his past that help him through some of his trauma, one being Kyogo-sama as well as Toru. They all help him kind of look past what his own problem was with the suicide of his mom. He blames himself partially, but has a hard time trying to accept what has happened and keeps blaming Yuki for all of his problems. But the sad reality is, the real blame should be going on to Kyo's dad. I mean, sure, we can't exactly say that, but if some of you have paid attention to the last episodes in Season 3 and his toxic behavior towards Kyo, as well as Kyo's mom, we definitely get the idea that in the long run he was responsible for practically abusing both his wife and his kid emotionally and physically just because he's upset with everything. I'm just sorry that Kyo's master didn't punch him in the face. At least we didn't have a chance to see that. Anyway, Kyo overall is a very wonderful character. Despite all of his flaws, he grew as a person, being more willing to open up towards others in a way that doesn't come off as very hostile. He begins to empathize with others, as well as finally accepting of who he is, as well as accepting both his past self and his current self, and looking forward to a future without blaming himself entirely. And that's all that is there today. Remember to subscribe, do a like, and feel free to comment of what sort of Fruits Basket Boy deserves better. And now, ladies and gentlemen, before we leave, here is Cinnamon with the song from Fruits Basket.
Thank you, Dragon, and thank you all for having me here on this wonderful day. I hope Fruits Basket will remember in future generations